All right, we are live. What's up, Akin?
Cool. What's going on?
Join our program for a second year, huh?
Yeah, appreciate you having me again.
Well, AP Racing's got a lot of interesting things going on. I don't know why I'm exactly excited. Maybe I can discover that with you right now, or like in this conversation. But I forgot exactly where I met you. Um, but I know you came to our event a few years ago. I think
Yeah,
it was like right. I think it was our flipped event, right? It was like 2000. I think it was like our 2018 flipped event.
yeah, yeah. You were running around, and I was like, "Where is this guy?" And I finally found you, but then I only caught you for like maybe 10 seconds. And you're like, "Yeah, shoot me an email," and we just kept following up over and over since then. And then like here we are, 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll certainly go into some depth there. So let's have our co-host introduce himself. So we got some 2018 alumni. We got some 2019 alumni. God, we got more of the OGs in the house. So Bernie, introduce yourself since you're a veteran here, and then maybe Nick, and then Tots. And one more thing. Share why you're interested in this one.
All right. Hey, I'm Bernard. I'm 19. I was a part of the 2018 PilotCity internship, summer internship. I worked on an autonomous drone project for security at my school. I was interested in this project just because I want to see, like, how, I'm all for neighborhood unity and stuff. I don't feel like there's enough of that in my neighborhood personally. So I just wanted to see, like, how exactly would bring how I really just want to see how this would bring people together, even though I don't think that was really your mission in the description, but I really want to see how this specific project could, a fun project to, hopefully end some violence and bring people together.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my name's Nicholas. I'm a junior at Antioch High School, and my project, I worked with Tati with working on the idea of an autonomous bus to take students from Antioch High School to Deer Valley High School to open up learning experience because the different schools had different programs. And I was kind of interested in this just to, maybe start small with learning how autonomous vehicles work instead of jumping straight to the big stuff.
That's the best way to do it anyways.
I'm Tatiana Lopez, and same as Nick, I'm an Antioch high school junior, and yeah, just we tried making a little autonomous racing car, but we couldn't do it. So figured this would be, a nice start, somebody that knows how to do it, and not just some freshman.
Oh, nice. I remember you both. Yes, I remember meeting you both at the it was an autonomous vehicle conference. I can't remember. I think Derek, you remember the name?
Yeah, Velodyne LiDAR World Safety Summit.
Yes. Oh, it's nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, and that actually comes kind of full circle. Like I remember Tati and Nick Diaz, they made like a video of like a Tokyo Drift song, like the that song,
Yeah.
And they had their autonomous vehicle, RC car racing around the gate, just like doing donuts and stuff, and he got the Tokyo Drift song on. So
we got to get that going for a real life car soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Keen, let's talk AP racing, and just want to be clear, it used to be called autonomous power racing, and you've changed it to AP racing. Give me clarity there, because autonomous power racing is like, okay, I understand what it is. AP racing is like, okay, what's AP, right? So just decipher that for us.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite simply, autonomous power racing was just a mouthful for a lot of people. And when we first started, it's not that people didn't understand what the word autonomous meant. It's just that we used to say stuff like self-driving because it came across a lot clearer and quicker. So it took us a while to use autonomous, but that became a mouthful. And then we're like, let's just shorten it to AP racing, because eventually we want to get it on like nice, cool little flight jackets or shirts. And autonomous power racing is a lot of words and letters to put on merch and stuff like that. But we probably will change the name once more.
Okay.
Yeah. But that'll come soon.
Okay. Well, as of now, AP racing.
Yep.
And you have an interesting history. I don't think I've ever kind of dove in with you directly with it, and I'm excited about having this conversation. And take us back, take us back to when you were in high school, and you're discovering what the heck you're doing, and you're maybe pursuing some passions, tinkering with a few things, how did your high school experiences or not, shape what you're doing now? And what journey did you take to get here? I know that's a big question, but we'd like to know some of your origin and how'd you get here. And I know you also worked for an autonomous vehicle organization that's released a really interesting solution recently. I think Zoox, right, was your former employer.
Yeah.
So I'd love to learn more about that along the way too, and your background in autonomous vehicles.
So not only did I work for a couple autonomous vehicle companies, we attempted to start one ourselves early on. It was right as I was ending college. But just to go back to your question about like high school and stuff like that. So I went to an all-boys school in New Jersey. And the biggest takeaway through that whole experience was just, we just had the opportunity to try a lot of different things. I wasn't necessarily the technologist in the strictest sense of the word at that time. I was doing sports. I was really into, the literary arts. I got into cybersecurity relatively early as well during that time. But I didn't really box myself into any particular niche at the time, which was really helpful because it allowed me to explore a lot more in college. And so by the time I got in, like towards the end of my college career, we were like, "Oh, I met with a couple of friends who were like, yo, we want to build a self-driving car." And at first I thought that was the stupidest thing. I was just like, I don't even know what that is. But they showed me like this little RC car and it was just zipping around. I was like, whoa, this is actually a thing. And this was right around the time Google was about to unveil that little ugly little car that they initially had. So the hype was barely there at the time. So right around that time when I saw the little RC car, they're like, look, we want to build something bigger. And then so we had to figure out next steps around then.
And when you say ugly car, are you pertaining to the one that they have right now?
No, even though they are using Chrysler Pacificas, I'm not sure. I don't think I've met anyone who's into minivans, but they had one that was lambasted by everybody. It was like this concept bulbous thing with a little LiDAR node on top. It looked like a really bad cartoon. And I was, it didn't excite anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you had this little background exploring, even looking at starting a startup. And how'd you take it from there? What was the iteration process? It seems like you were interested in this topic for a long time.
Yeah. So it's been a little over 5 years now since I've been in the industry. That's sounds super professional. We were just pretty much tinkering around RC cars, go-karts, and everything. So I'll take you back a little bit as I was previously.
Please.
We started with an RC car, and it was just that we had a meetup group that was no larger than 5-10 people maybe, and we're just a couple nerds like holed up in like one of the Rutgers houses. So I went to Rutgers in New Jersey, and they had like some off-campus housing. And we're just holed up, like trying to make this thing work. And then we had a couple of friends who were interested and like, okay, cool. Let's figure out how to make this something that's cool and worthy of bragging to our friends. So the next iteration was building out a go-kart. So we bought this go-kart online and we pretty much took off the entire like body and went to a local body shop and said, hey, could you build us and like this aluminum frame so that we can put like computers and a whole bunch of stuff. And they're really gracious and helped us out with that. And then so, fast forward, we pretty much built out our first go-kart iteration of a self-driving car. And we called it Cujo at the time because we had no idea what we were doing. And it pretty much decided to act on its own. It was such a bad iteration that we had to, anytime we were about to like test new software, we had it linked up to like an actual like dog chain because we were so unsure of what was going to happen. And many times it did go out of control. But that was a really interesting experience because we decided to hype ourselves up and like give ourselves like a really concrete goal at the time. So we were like, okay, in 6 months, can we build out a car and put on a demo at the new Bell Labs co-working space? And so Bell Labs was like AT&T back in the day. That's when like Edison was huge. And so like they pretty much revitalized the space. And we hit them up. We're like, hey, we'd like to demo this new piece of technology for like, 100 people. They're like, yeah, sure. So we're just like, oh man, we're like these college guys who had no idea what we were doing. And yet we're about to demo in front of the likes of like people who represented NBC, Disney, a couple tech companies in New Jersey. And we're like, okay, we definitely were in over our heads at the time, but we ended up pulling it off. It wasn't the best demo, but we had to go around some cones and a whole bunch of other stuff. But fast forward, we were like, okay, what's the next step here? And we wanted to get a lot of our friends on board, but the problem was a few things. They either had no money, they didn't know how to do it, or the tech was just too complicated for them to like really adapt quickly. So since then, we've been trying to figure out, one, how do we get a lot of students on board at the high school and college level, and reduce that barrier to entry in terms of cost and expertise in order to start building their own.
How did you fall into doing this, right? Because you kind of hit the ground running there. You're just like, yeah, we start pitching to people at Bell Labs, I'm over at Rutgers, just, yeah. How did you even get to that? Like, and I think Brody might have a question for you afterwards, but yeah, how'd you even get to that point, of like being positioned in an environment where you actually even have access to even programming autonomous vehicles, or even having the interest to actually even doing it,
At its core, it was just, being friends. We like having a few friends who were just as ambitious and just curious as you are. Because at the time we didn't have that much money, but we're like, okay, we just figured out what needs to be done. We're like, we need a car, we need a computer, and we need some sensors. At the time, the sensors were a camera. We're pretty much a camera and some like radar, some radar sensors like that. So we're like, let's just get to it. Now, in terms of like positioning ourselves and pitching to people, we took that part relatively seriously at the time, because we wanted to, raise some money, just because we're positioning ourselves as a research organization. And so we wanted to raise some money so we can not only grow our core group out, but also give other groups at other colleges the opportunity to build out their own cars. But at the end of the day, the benefit of being that young is that you're also dumb. So you go in with this crazy amount of confidence and you're just like, yeah, we're going to build out this research org. We're going to build out this car. It's going to do last mile deliveries, all these things. And we had no idea what we're doing. But because of that, that was actually a huge benefit for us, because we're just like, we had an undying belief that it would work. At the end of the day, it didn't, but it helped us figure out the next steps as to like what to do next. So it like, to kind of sum up that answer, is just like, look, we were super young, we had nothing to lose, we just made sure, at the end of the day, we're all friends to start with, and we're just very curious as to how to do this together.
All right.
So the question I have is, this was our first question is, how long ago was all this with the go-kart and stuff like that?
It's 2021, right? So this was around 2015, 2016.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, I don't know how far autonomous technology had come I don't know how far autonomous technology had come, or how far it had come at that point. So I just wanted to know, like, where were you getting your knowledge from? Was it all just literally just sitting in a lab and just doing everything yourself manually, and like literally just looking at the cameras and building obstacles just with a regular camera and sensors? Like, what technology did you have at the time? Where were you getting your knowledge? Because I know now I could just go watch a YouTube video or Google it, probably have a lot more knowledge than you had back then. because of how far we've come. So I want to know, like, how are you getting your knowledge and research?
No, that's a good question. It's honestly the same way we're getting it today. Lots of Googling, a lot of YouTubing. Thankfully, the core team at the time, around that like 2015, 2016 time, we're all just college kids at the time, and we were studying programming in college, so we had some basic knowledge. And then there was 1 or 2 older guys in the group who were kind of branching out to run their own startups. And they gave us the framework to like how to think about these things. But generally, in terms of figuring out what needs to be done, it was a lot of Googling. So we pretty much looked up what Google was doing. We looked up some really simple methods, like what computer vision means, like how do we use a stereo camera, some robotic stuff for the go-kart. And in terms of testing, you say lab, I'm like, yeah, if you want to call the garage a lab, that was yeah, we were legit. We're in our buddy's garage, and he had enough driveway space. We worked on, in terms of software, the software was worked on at home on our own times, and we just pretty much gave ourselves deadlines, and we would check in each other via Slack and stuff like that. And in terms of when we got together maybe once or twice a week to actually do some software and hardware work. So we met up in his garage, we put stuff together, we broke a lot of things, and his driveway was long enough too. So we just, went to the local store and just put some cones together and say, okay, let's like make some makeshift loops and see if it can go around. And you can't forget the dog chain either.
That's interesting that you were able to. I mean, I don't know if this was still back in Jersey.
Yeah, this is still back in Jersey.
Yeah, so I was just saying that was interesting that you were able to, like you said, a group of 5 to 10 boys to all come and do some outside project all together and actually come and be dedicated. That's interesting. I've been trying to, start projects myself, and it's like, hey, friends, come do something. People that I don't even know, but I know are smart, come do something. But no one, seems like it's hard out here to, try to get a team to come do some stuff. So that's interesting that you had a big team of big brains that were willing to do a lot of work, and I'm glad that started off in a good way for you.
No, thank you. And you make an interesting point as to like getting some of your friends like on board like doing your projects. So I joined that project because there are 1 or 2 guys who are already enthusiastically about that life, and they're like, yo, this is what we have. Even though like on the outside looking in, it was very pitiful at the start of the RC car, but they were so excited, and they pretty much sold the rest of us on the dream of like what this future could look like. That we're like, okay, let's make this into the thing, you want to make it into. So the insight and like advice I'd give to you is like, okay, if you really are excited about a particular technology or project more than anything, start working on it yourself. You might get far, you probably not, or just don't get discouraged in that sense, but just work on it whenever you have the time. And if you're really excited, you just find one other person and keep showcasing. Even if you are embarrassed, don't even worry about it. Just showcase it. People are like, okay, they'll do 1 or 2 things. Or 1 or 3 things. They'll either ignore you, laugh at you, or ask you questions, all of which are good things. So now you have feedback. But there are people out there that want to work on interesting things. So I would say for you, remain interested and stay enthusiastic about it.
All right, thank you.
Got it.
That was good.
That single thing alone helps. I feel like the friends around you to kind of work on interesting things is really what gets people's juices flowing on, especially on something that you don't even know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So Keen, so at some point you got over here, right? You got over here to the San Francisco Bay Area, and I believe I'm not sure if I'm correct here, but I believe you started hanging out in like a warehouse in West Oakland where you were racing autonomous vehicles. I actually know about that because when you said donkey car, about a year ago, I looked at it, I was like, oh, what is that donkey car? And then I looked up that it was actually part of the kind of squad, the meetup that you guys had for a little bit, right? In the West Oakland warehouse, where you actually race autonomous vehicles, right? That like the micro autonomous vehicles at least. So, what about that? You know, where did that come in the storyline of your interest in autonomous vehicles coming over here, hanging out with this larger group of people? It seems like that had interest in these items.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're referring to is the DIY robocars group, and they're an awesome group here in the Bay Area, and they're pretty much spanned out worldwide now in terms of their meetup. But we came across that because initially the next iteration of our I guess go-kart was like, okay, we were like, all right, we want to make this cool and we want to make this something that we like to do all the time. So like, let's race these go-karts against each other. So initially we're like, we want to enable high school and college students to build their own autonomous go-karts and race them against each other in their back lots. That didn't work out as well as we wanted it to.
A few crashes, you know.
Shoot, I wish
a few mad neighbors, you know.
I wish that was the case, but more truthfully, it was just that it was really expensive for a lot of schools to embark upon, especially if they didn't know what they're doing. And some classrooms, they were counterintuitively taking it more seriously than we intended. So a lot of frustration happens really early. So then we went back to the drawing board, like, okay, how do we make this even simpler, right? And we're like, why not? Then we came across the DIY Robocar group and their donkey car, they were doing RC cars. Like, oh, that's brilliant. So at the time I was working for a logistics startup and we had warehouse space. So we invited a few of those guys in and we talked to them and learned a lot about what they're doing. And then, you know, we pretty much we got invited to their quarterly hacking races where a whole bunch of like industry software engineers just got together and like built out their own cars and raced them. So we pretty much were like, okay, this is perfect because now we can take something similar and bring it to the high school and college level. And that's exactly where we are today.
Yeah. So you essentially interpreted this, you had this interest with some folks over at home, you know, and where you went to college. You came over here, discovered this group who had this smaller version of a go-kart, an RC car that they were actually making. They're training it to be autonomous and programming it to actually race, you know, each other.
Yeah.
And then you started kind of seeing the opportunity, like, wow, that's, you know, we need to kind of, you know, this helps to kind of break down, right, in a simplified manner to get more people to be in this space. And young people are great opportunities to be inspired to get into this space of engineering and computer science and having the abilities. So you started incorporating, at some point you developed AP racing and autonomous power racing, right? Where you essentially formulate this organization that's now supporting, you know, young people to race these autonomous vehicles and programming them for the form of entertainment, but through entertainment, you're essentially teaching them how to code, right? Or to engineer.
You more so, yeah, definitely on the engineering side, and more so than just coding. What I've seen over the years is a really great initiative and like this huge effort to get more of our generation to code and all these things. But I don't think you can't just say, hey, learn the code, because to Bernard's point, he's just like, no one's interested. He's like, what am I coding, right? But if you say, hey, look, we want you to build out a race car that can complete a lap to begin with, and then we want you to build a race car that can race against other robot race cars, and then we want to see if you can be the #1 race car in your neighborhood, in your school, in your state, and so on and so on. So now what we've done here is just like, now we've given everyone a really particular niche. Yeah, might be a narrow focus, but at the end of the day, the skills that you're learning throughout that whole journey is one, you can brag about it, and you can show off exactly what you're doing. People will immediately get what you're doing. Two, the skills carry over to just about every industry. And what you need to realize is that AI is the game changer today, and it will continue to be the game changer for the foreseeable future. So if you have even a basic understanding of how under the hood of AI works and robotic cars and so on and so forth works, you're a step ahead of the game in terms of furthering your own ambitions in your career. And my own personal philosophy is just, it's just like, look, the best investment you can make is the investment into yourself. Just by picking up like a skill in AI programming and robotics, you're putting yourself ahead of the game, almost tenfold. You're pretty much preparing yourself for a future and a job that they don't even have the description for yet, but you can create it out of thin air yourself just because you have that skill set.
Yeah. So give us a baseline, okay? What's
Yeah.
AP racing? Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And where you guys going with it?
So AP Racing today, what it is an education platform for students to learn AI programming in the sense of how to build and race an autonomous car. And what we're building now, we had to take a step back and we're rebuilding our product. And what we're building now is a platform in which students can go online through their browser, get video lessons. They learn some of the basics of AI programming. Through their browser, they also get to train an autonomous car and see exactly how it operates. And then eventually they'll be able to race amongst each other and against their friends.
That is exciting on a multitude of levels. When I first met you, you were looking at physical cars, RC cars, right? Are we looking at a simulated version now, or are we going to do a simulated and physical, or is there going to be a hybrid? What's the vision around that?
Simulated for now, because we tried to do the physical stuff. It's just complicated. It gets complicated early on because not everyone can get access to the same parts. It gets expensive. Things break easily and they aren't as replaceable, relatively so at least. But when you do it through a simulation, the only thing that breaks is software. You send a message to a developer, they're like, okay, cool, I'll make the software update and it's fixed, right? But even so, then the issue we discovered with that, some folks didn't have the compatible computer tech that made the software work. So we're like, okay, how do we make this work? So we're just like, let's just make it all through the browser. You go on your computer, you open up Google Chrome or Firefox, you log in, and you have everything there. And so you get some video lessons. You can get access to a simulator through the browser. And then if you need help, you can find it on our Discord channel where you'll eventually have a whole bunch of people working on similar issues, and then you can just talk to them.
And paint a picture here, okay? So you got this platform where a young person can hop in, sign up, log in, get online, and then go through some basic training. You got to learn how to drive a car, right? So you go through some basic training, know how the engine works, know how the vehicle works, know what you're doing while you're in the driver's seat. And then you're essentially are prescribed some level of a potential track. Or you can choose different maps even that people are competing in, right? And then you're essentially it's this dumb car, right, that you have to train from scratch to some extent.
Absolutely.
And you have to train it with your arrows on your keyboards, or you have to do something to train it, and love to elaborate on that. And then you're imagining that more students who know nothing about autonomous vehicles, probably even know nothing about computer programming, right? Hopping on, doing this stuff. And then you're going to try to get a mass of these students, I'm assuming, to start racing each other.
Right.
And so what does that look like? So you're basically making like a NASCAR online for autonomous vehicles. Like what's the goal? What's
the goal? The goal is pretty much to put on this awesome autonomous race league that students can be entertained learning through and also just watching. But the ultimate goal, the personal goal for myself, and the reason I'm starting this is because I've just been throughout my life is just like, look, if I don't know something, I'm gonna go out and seek and figure out either Google it, I'm gonna talk to a lot of people. By the end of the day, you're not gonna tell me that I don't know it, because at the end of the day, I'll know at least some fundamentals. And what the past year has showed us, it has made it like absolutely clear for us, is that at the end of the day, who you can really depend on is yourself. So you owe it to yourself to pick up a new skill, especially if you have downtime, and use it to make either a better life for yourself or just do something interesting. You only have one life to live, so you wanna make it an interesting story, right? So that comes through, meeting a lot of people and talking to them, having loads of fun with them, and just working on really cool projects with them. So this is my way of providing that for people. So at the end of the day, you don't have to stick on the platform. I want people to either spend some time on it, and by the time they leave, they're like, wow, I learned something new, and I maybe met one or two new friends that are seemingly cool, and then I'm on to building something else that either uses these skills, or I can just tell a story about.
Yeah, Bernie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I really like that. Hold on. I was gonna say that I really like that whole just dip your toes in a bunch of different subjects to try to figure out not even just what you want to do, just to say you did it and just to make life interesting. That's something I recently started doing. I realized like I have so much downtime. Like there's nothing I'm doing. Like I'm still so young, and I felt like I don't know. Just this is more of a me to someone else my age type thing. Like we're still so young, and you have a lot of downtime. You just have to realize like what you can do being so young, and with all this stuff just starting up. I like that you're pushing this message. Like literally just come, have fun building a car, and in that you might mess around and learn how to code or something. That's something I've been taking up myself. I've been like just working weird jobs that I don't even really care about or know how to do. And at the end, like I come out knowing something new. So just, having that whole objective of just try it, you'll learn something. I know you will. And this might even be something you can take on to the future or something to spend your time with. I like that you're pushing that.
Yeah, I mean, a quick parallel is like my generation. I don't know if you guys are aware, we had MySpace. That was pre-Facebook. Yeah. So, but you'll hear a lot of folks. Man, I sound old when I talk like that. You'll notice a lot of folks in my generation. They'll say, "Hey, I learned about HTML through MySpace because we had to code our home pages, how to figure out how to plug in music, how to make the scrolly background." But that was our introduction. If we didn't have one prior to some basic HTML, some basic like intro web development. Some of my peers, they're like that pretty much got them into and propelled them throughout their entire life in terms of like their interest in computers. Others, they didn't care, but they can say that they know some basic stuff, like very basic. Yeah. MySpace we're talking about. But we want to have a similar impact, but a lot stronger.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you, Bernie. Akin, so the project that you have for students this year is you'd like for students to acquire tech and business skills that can change your life and impact the community around you. And you want them to assemble an autonomous vehicle race team that participates in an online race with industry pros and amateurs, gain skills in AI programming, 3D design, and business development. There's a lot to unpack there that's exciting, right? Number one, gain some skills that are relevant, into the future, right? Have fun while you're doing it by racing autonomous vehicles, right? Participate in an online race. Yeah. And maybe perhaps it's going to go into the physical environment, and maybe you're racing real autonomous vehicles, right? That you can actually sit in yourself or at least watch, while it kind of races, right? And they're able to do some programming and learn AI and kind of have this machine learn, right? How to race around this track. And then you're saying that because it's digital, because it's simulation, and because it's, these are skills that students can have, they can 3D design their own vehicle, right? To some extent, potentially, and even create skins around their own car, basically, right? And also learn business development. So, one thing I want to start with is really AI programming, 3D design, business development piece, right? Because So what do you imagine? And I know you're developing the tool still, right? And getting everything situated. So paint us a picture of what you're able to do with this car, like it's exciting to be able to make your own autonomous vehicle and then race it. So tell us more about the making of it itself.
So when you download the simulator, you pretty much have everything you need. And you don't even have to make a skin. The simulator has a couple built-in skins already, and you might be satisfied with it, you might not, but you have everything you need in terms of that. But what we want is you to develop some skins that represent your team or anything that you're interested in. That'll pretty much enclose the car in simulation, and then on the the 3D design part is fairly simple. You're pretty much creating some skins that'll go on top of your car. And on the business development side, look, and on the business development side, what you have to understand is like if you don't know anything throughout this world, no sales. So, and if you can sell it, you'll be just fine. So that's what we essentially want to teach some students through AP Racing. It's like, okay, I'm building a car, I'm working in the simulation, but I also want to get my friends to watch or see what I'm doing. And also want potential sponsors to sponsor my school so that we can have this program for other classrooms and other students. So I'll kind of break down. I know there's a lot to unpack in terms of our RFP, so I'll break it down. I'll help you break it down. So you're going to assemble a team that does the following. You're going to train a self-driving car in simulation that can participate in a pilot exhibition or in the race with the industry pros and the donkey cart community. 2, you're going to 3D design several car skins that represent your team. You can take it a step further and develop some skins that you would want to see in real life. So that'll take a little bit more engineering, but I wouldn't make it too complicated. 3, you're going to create several marketing campaigns to get your friends to watch a race or at least watch a video of what you're doing, and then one for sponsors. And then what the market, so pretty much with the sponsorship thing, imagine you had Google or you had let's say you had Ferrari come up and they're like, yo, we really like what you guys are doing. How can we get on board? We love for you to present to us and make us a proposition. All right, cool. Big sponsor hits you up and now you got to put together a presentation. So that presentation should be very simple and you should highlight the benefits of why you guys are doing this. So that includes a 1-pager describing your team and your project. So the highs and lows, a 3D design of your car skins, and a video of your car in simulation. Keep it really simple. And then, see how you can sell a sponsor on this and then potentially get a sponsor to sponsor your school in the future.
So that's very interesting. That's interesting tasks, right? Mm-hmm. So number one, is there any particular skills that students should come with to have the best leg up in kind of getting started? Because 3D design does require some learning how to use particular softwares, like whether it's Fusion, which is taught in class, by the way, Inventor, which is also taught in class too. Mm-hmm. And Unity is in game design classes here and there, right? But a lot of people know Adobe, like Photoshop and like Illustrator and stuff like that. So what kind of skills do you need to do some of this to get started, if any at all? And how do you drive it down so there's less and less skills needed to be able to do this stuff? Because in order to make it accessible, right, we have to make it accessible. Yeah.
Unity, in terms of the 3D stuff, Unity for sure. That's what the simulator is built on. If you don't, you mentioned, Adobe Photoshop. So for those who have no experience in, 3D design, or maybe they want to, go down the route of, I actually don't know if this is proper, so definitely check in on this. Go down the route of a car designer. They start with a sketch, start with a few sketches, keep them logged, okay? Mm-hmm. And then, then once you start seeing some sketches you like, upload them. For now, we'll say just upload them to Discord and we'll log them for you. And then figure out how to make it how to make it look nice, you know, make that sketch look pretty. So even if you don't get we'll even like have some leeway here. Like even if you can't, for whatever reason, get a skin developed for the simulator, that's okay. Make a high grade concept sketch that you'd like to see in the simulator. And then eventually we'll see exactly, then we can figure out next steps as how to build this. Now, in terms of other software skills, if you know Python, amazing. If you don't, it's okay. In terms of training the car in simulator, it's very basic and to get started, and you pretty much manually control the car around, and then you run a command, and then it's gonna drive exactly how you trained it. So it's at that point it's a skill of, can you control the car well? But then there are a whole bunch of other things. If you know Python, it makes things easy. Like you can create parts and other things like that to make your simulation run smoother. In terms of marketing and biz dev, if you have experience in design, if you know how to write well, those are all preferable. But at the end of the day, for any of this stuff, we just want students to have a sense of self-agency. So if you don't know something, you know how to ask, you know how to research, and you know how to get things done. And some creativity, absolutely. So the biggest thing we'll say is just not to take yourself too seriously. It's just,
Yeah.
You know, look at what part of, and also you don't have to know. That's why we made this kind of like a three-pronged approach in terms of setting up a team. So not everybody on the team needs to learn no coding. Not everybody on the team needs to know some 3D design. And even if you're one person, pick one, even if you're one person, pick one area where you know you'll be really good at, and then focus on that part. And then, you know, figure out some frameworks to figure out the other stuff. Like, so if you know you're really good at the software side, go all in on the software. And then if you have some ideas for a sketch, try your best on a sketch, and we'll see where we can help you out there. And on the marketing side too, everybody should be all hands in on for that one, because it's one thing to build, but it's another thing to get people interested. So that's the goal for every team. You have to be able to get people interested on the sponsorship side, and also on, you know, the viewership side.
So you got three skill sets or three functions, right, of this team. There's design, there's some coding, and there's sponsorships and selling, right? And there's a spectrum for both of all three of these functions. So for design, you want to eventually try to get to a 3D design so you can upload a skin into the simulator and then design your own autonomous vehicle kind of skin and shell, right? But if you don't know that, sketch it out, right? Have a detailed drawing and then upload on Discord, somehow have a good, you know, just get communication with your team through your Discord. And then, you know, then you have that spectrum, design from sketch or 3D design it, or even start working towards 2D design using Adobe, whatever, and just kind of get closer to learning 3D design. But it's okay to have the spectrum. For the coding part, that probably is more of a hard kind of like, hey, you got to learn how to do Python to do it. But if you want to learn Python to start doing it, I'm sure there's example templates that you have eventually that you're able to tinker from and actually manipulate the code to make it the most effective it can be. But you don't have to train it with using your digital wrench, right? The Python code to kind of, you know, tweak some things and reflash the CPU, whatever you got to do, right? With the Python, you can also train it manually. You train the car manually. So you can have it, and do you use arrows to move the car, a mouse? What's your, how do you actually train?
Yeah, you have a few options. You can get an actual racing wheel to hook up to your computer. You can use a mouse, or you can use your keyboard.
Okay, cool. And Nick, we'll get to your question in a little bit. So we got the spectrum of coding. You can train it manually, you know, with your own gaming devices, your own kind of racing methods, right? And then, or you can do some learn Python, right? Yeah, and then if you know Python already, you can get started and just, you know, tweak that car, right? And then on the sponsorship side, which I think is the most interesting part of this, is you're essentially looking to get sponsored as a racer, right? You're looking to get sponsored as an autonomous vehicle racer in this digital online race with all these other people competing with each other. So, and it seems like for that, it's really just going out there and saying, hey, we got a good team. We're from this city. We're from this school. We're looking for, $100, $200, $500, even $1,000 to get our team more together to design our skins be better. Maybe we can put your logo on the car. And then we can, do our best to, optimize our race and go around the track. And maybe we can make the track, in our city, right? Maybe the government sponsoring them, right? So maybe there's a digital map of the aero map of, San Leandro or Antioch or Oakland or whatever, right? And then people are racing these different communities, again, sponsored from their own community, perhaps, right?
Yeah.
And then simultaneously, it's like workforce development too for their own community, right? Because people are learning coding and designing and stuff like that. And then the sponsoring part still, like there's a whole layer of like opportunity there. So can you make like different maps and stuff? Like can someone import an aero map from Google Maps, something like that, like their school or their neighborhood or their city eventually? Like how do the maps work?
So now that you mentioned that, we thought about that in terms of the RFP. We just wanted to keep it simple, but we won't object to anyone deciding to build out their own track. So in the open source community, there are schools out in like Australia. There's a school out in Australia that's been doing this. So if a student has some relative experience in simulation, in track design and simulation design, they can take a sketch of their school's hallways or the parking lot or what have you, right? And design their own track. So you can do that as like maybe an ad hoc for the 3D design part. Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to object to that. In terms of how to do it, that's not my experience yet, but we can figure something out.
Okay, Nick.
So I was just going to ask, so I'm guessing Python. How long did it take you to learn, like, or do you know how to use it like super good? Or are you still, learning as you go, or for Python?
I just know the bare minimum fundamentals. Learning as I go, as on a need to know basis, but because I'm just being pulled in so many directions. So yeah, in terms of Python is relatively simple to learn, especially when you have something to work towards too. So
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about trying to learn everything in Python. I mean, this goes for just about any subject. Don't try to learn everything. Figure out what you need to know for that particular for whatever particular project you're working on. Yeah.
Oh, was there any specific like program that you used to learn it, or did you kind of just, like you said, go on Google, search it up, and learn to plug it in like that?
Yeah, it was just a lot of Googling on like Stack Overflow and seeing what's up there.
Okay.
Like asking the donkey community and stuff like that. I will post resources to the Discord and link people to the donkey car community.
Okay.
They're super helpful there. And then also on the AP Racing platform, even though it's not built out just yet, what we have a semi-structured pathway of videos that'll kind of give you an overlook as to like what you should be knowing. And then
Okay.
you can pick whatever area you want to go into and dive deep in there.
Okay, yeah, that's just what I wanted to know. If you need to learn a lot, or kind of just the bare minimum and start from there.
Start from bare minimum. Don't stress yourself out. It's not worth it in terms of the stress. Like, start from bare minimum, and then you'll quickly realize like where you want to learn, and then you won't even realize that you'll probably learn some advanced stuff before you learn some of the basic stuff, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't stress too much about that. Just think more about the project and the goal you have.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Nick, I know that you might have class right now, because I know Tati does too. So
Oh,
feel
shoot.
free to jump out and we'll carry the convo.
I'm in it right now. I'll listen. I'll just
I think Tati was in the same boat. She just kind of like turned off her video, but she's really just kind of like two screens. That's the benefit of having teams, right? For Antioch High School, and then you can be on Zoom somewhere else. So thank you for all those details. Very excited about this. So I guess the upfront question is, what do you have? What do you think you'll have available, spring, now, 2021, and what are you guys building towards, and what can students get excited and look forward to as they kind of iterate with you in developing this infrastructure?
When you say spring, you have a month in particular that you're thinking about?
Yeah, just this year in our program and our flagship, and what can students expect to engage with? Will you have a full-blown simulator where they can do
Yes.
everything? What can they
So-
do now, and what will they be able to do later? What can they get excited about later as well?
At this very moment, what they can do now is sign up and have access to a structured pathway of videos. They'll have a pretty solid overview of everything from how to install the simulator down to control theory and computer vision. And what we're looking to develop more in the future is to flesh out more of that educational stuff, like in terms of videos, and then also having a simulator that works through the browser. We have a lot more lofty goals than that, but I want to set the expectation and say that's where we're looking forward to most.
Okay, so ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Vaccines out, everyone's, going somewhere physically, and you get this infrastructure of young people aspiring to be autonomous vehicle enthusiasts, right? And programmers, designers, people who are doing business around this space. And, there's a point where, there's a next evolution in transport systems, right? And they're starting to be more autonomous vehicle in general, right, in our society. Do you imagine a autonomous vehicle races, like actual physically, like a NASCAR for autonomous vehicles?
Hell yeah. I mean, that's what we imagined prior to this, before COVID and all that stuff hit. That's what we were actually aiming for. But we had to check ourselves. Like, we got a reality check. Like, look, it was really difficult to do something as lofty as that in the beginning. And it goes back to what we learned early on when we set about this whole industry, is like, start super small and keep going from there. So, and even with that said, the simulation and having everything through the browser is not even that small. It's actually really impactful. So the way we envision is that everything through the browser will still be strong. And that's where we intend to focus the most of our effort. Because at the end of the day, we're not only thinking about schools that have it all, they have the funds to do all these things, but we're also thinking about students who are just like, look, I got a laptop, I got a desktop, what can I do? Like, good, you can do plenty with that. So that's at the very core who we have in mind, is access for everybody to do it anywhere, any place. But what comes out of that is, like, now you have a leaderboard that you're tracking your educational progress, you're tracking your actual race progress. And then what students can aspire to is, like, once or several times a quarter, they can aspire to a regional race where they build an actual car and they race with everybody in the community. Over time, what that looks like is like having this national race, or like a Grand Prix that tours the US, where he's like, okay, these guys are hotshots on the simulation. Let's see if they're hotshots in real life and build out a real car. Whether that's tracks across different schools in America, or tracks across at different automakers or big tech companies, we'll figure that stuff out. By the end of the day, it's gonna be a combination where students are training or learning their best online as to how to be AI programmers. And then they take that skill to the real world and build out real cars. And they also use those skills to, eventually build out rockets and build out other cool pieces of technology.
Ooh, you're talking about racing rockets right now?
No. Well, maybe in space. That's Elon's gonna figure out how to we're gonna figure out how to do frequent space travel. And next thing we'll be talking about our sci-fi dreams at this point.
Going around the moon a couple times. Take a few laps around the moon. So
space is cool. One of my other aspirations is, how do we race aquatic vehicles and stuff like that autonomously. I think that would be super cool. So
do you have a fascination with racing? Is that also a big part of the what you're thinking? Did you just fall into the racing part?
No. I was an athlete for a very long time. I mean, I still consider myself one to some degree. I did sports like basketball, I did lacrosse, I did fencing, I did everything. I mean, wow, I did a lot of sports growing up. And then one of my favorite ones is track and field. I ran track collegiately. And so I don't look at life through a lens of competition with other people and other external factors. It's more as a competition with myself. Because at the end of the day, like when you're working on a project or you're trying to succeed in something, the person that gets in the way of that success is yourself. And I'm learning that day in and day out. All my relative successes up until this point have been when I just trusted myself to, let things happen based on my training. And also just saying, hey, it's okay to fail and just going straight into something, right? So that competitive streak has just always stuck with me from like playing basketball and running track. And it's pretty awesome when you see things race. You're just like, even from elementary school, the first thing that came out of our mouths when we set foot on the playground, I was like, hey, you want to race? Like, I bet you're faster than me. I mean, I bet I'm faster than you, right? It's like, okay, let's shoot for it, right? So, yeah, competition is just baked in every grain of our lives that in ways we don't realize. So I'm just like, all right, let's just put this in the forefront.
Yeah, I love the idea. Well, first of all, that clarifies it because I was like, where did racing come in? To all this stuff. And you're an athlete, so that's a natural competition. I like the focus on self competition, that you have, because in this particular format, inspiring students to just be the better version of themselves by racing themselves and beating their goals, being their record. I feel like is a healthy way of approaching it. And one last question I have for you is around audience. Okay. So what's the audience for this kind of midterm goal, the long-term goal? What would you like to see when it comes to the audience for these racers and these programmers and designers and coders, and sponsorees?
Yeah. So the challenge right now, I mean, you could honestly look up a video of Amazon's Amazon's Deep Racer and see what that looks like and not be excited. So I actually don't look it up. It's not that exciting. It's pretty boring. But with the donkey cart community, what I really like what they're doing and what I think the audience is amongst the participants. So you yourself are going to be the biggest hype man. Then your team is going to be the next biggest hype man. And then you have this community of people who also participate to be your hype man. And with that, we expect the audience for this to grow, and not for the pure racing aspect, because to be quite honest, like the technology isn't there to have like a full-fledged F1 rally car like race with autonomous cars. Yeah, it's just, you can look up videos of this online. It's not happening right now, but it will eventually happen in the future. But where the allure comes in will be from the people involved, from the students involved, the personal bests that they're setting, the excitement they get from building something from virtually nothing. You were touching upon like personal bests, like it's not even a concept in track and field. At first, I thought it was like, okay, me against these eight other competitive runners, right? And I got to beat them to the finish line. Yes, conceptually, like that's pretty much the goal. And at the end of the day, people remember the winner. But the field is so large where it becomes really easy to be discouraged, as because you're always going to be quote unquote losing against everyone. But the real barometer, the one that really matters throughout your life, is the personal bests. So if you ever watch a track and field race, you'll hear the commentators say, hey, his PR is XYZ, or his PB, personal record, personal best. So we want to take a very similar approach to AI racing and this type of competition, is where from outside looking in, you're racing against other teams and there's that camaraderie and there's that competition being had. But at the end of the day, when you go home or you're like at the computer by yourself, you're like, okay, what did I do that made me run this car in X amount of seconds, or like what was really successful? How can we replicate that? Okay, and what sucked about it, and how can we avoid that next time? Because by the time you figure those things out, you're not only better than yourself than you were before, you're also probably better than 5, 10, like maybe at least one other person. And that already puts you a step ahead than what you previously thought.
Yeah, now we're getting into philosophy of camaraderie and competition. That's another convo.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Akin. This is good context. This is going to be content in the program for AP Racing for students who are selecting it, right? So this is going to provide them good grounds to understand what to expect, what to build, what to do, how to approach it, right? So we'll hold you back for a little longer so we can actually have you develop some vlogs now. But I want to ask if Bernie or Nick has any last questions, any last comments, any last thoughts for Akin?
Oh, I guess my last comments is, I mean, I just okay. I just want to say I
Bernie
really
loves you. Bernie loves you.
Appreciate it, Bernie.
I'm glad I got to be here and talk to you. This is not even just like on the racing stuff. You're just pretty inspirational. I'm gonna just say it. You're a pretty inspirational person to myself, because I struggle with, or as I said right now, I recently started struggling with, achieving my goals and wanting to stick to them. And, just you gave me a lot of outlooks on problems I was having in my life right now, which was like, you are your biggest competitor. And like, that's something I'm just not realizing, like, yeah, I am. Like, if I want something, these small little bits of knowledge, I don't just have to take it to the max immediately and, figure something out just that same day, just be the master of it. Like, I can just go dabble in knowledge and, figure small things out. And, that's something I have been doing. So just like good to know that that's a valid form of, progressing through life. And, just that too, just your progression through life and how, like, it seems like, you just have projects that like were just absolutely just just garbage, just didn't even, not garbage, but like in the sense of like execution, like you guys knew nothing was gonna happen. Still, you sat there, or not nothing, but like you knew that you guys didn't really what you had didn't, it wasn't a foreseeable future, but you still stuck to it. And now look where you are. You have your own program around autonomous racing, from just starting with go-karts in a garage. So it's like, you're not top of the line CEO, multi-billionaire, but I still consider you successful because you stuck with it, and it's something that you didn't just drop. And I'm glad that I got to sit here and listen and, just get inspired, really. Just thank you for inspiring me.
Nah, thank you, Bernie. No, that was inspiration in of itself. Yeah, man, biggest thing is give yourself the ability, like, just give yourself the future forgiveness of failing. And then like you realize that a lot of us, everyone struggles with this. You're just like, I want this to be perfect, or X, Y, and Z, right? But yeah, just give yourself the leeway. Just like, look, yeah, it's probably gonna mess up, but let's see what we can learn out of the outcome, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Great, thank you, Nick. Any comments from you? Do
Um,
you love Akin as well?
I did want to say thank you for, coming out and talking to us, but I might have to message you sooner or later about some stuff I have in mind, see your opinion on it. But no, thank you, for the insight on everything, not having to learn everything at once, kind of just start from scratch, learn a little bit what you need to know. Don't jump straight in and bury yourself in work.
Yeah. And yeah, for the both of you, yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or email. Email is better. LinkedIn I check less often these days. But Derek has my email, akin@apracing.io. I'll respond. Forgive me if it's a little late, but yeah, I'll definitely, I got you guys.
Nick, are you gonna do the autonomous shuttle between the two schools still? Like, are you still pondering on that?
Yeah, it's still in mind. I kind of brought it back. I've been gathering a bunch of the stuff from that project back into a big file and all that. So I'm going to see what everyone's doing, see if they still want to be a part of it, or if it's just going to be me, Tati, Tony, or any of
Yeah,
them.
I mean, things may change too, like with hybrid distance learning, maybe students could be shuttled to their school and to another school. Like, it's just like an autonomous vehicle, in your own community, and it's just shuttling people like a bus would, like a school bus would.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it's something along that line. So definitely think about reconfiguring it as well.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Just got to figure everything out, see who wants to be a part of it.
Cool. Well, Akin, really appreciate your time. Bernie, thanks for coming. Nick, thank you for tagging along.
Yep.
We will see you all very soon.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Thanks, fellas.